Hello and welcome to the O&M Stockroom. We are your hosts, Brian McGarry.
And Ken O'Malley.
Tonight is episode 14 of Complimentary Cinema. If you're new to the channel, Complimentary Cinema is a program where we review and discuss films that you can watch for free that are available on YouTube or elsewhere. Be warned, we discuss films in detail, so consider this a full spoiler alerts. So tonight, what's our film, Ken?
So we watched the 2016 film, American Pastoral, which is a drama, I would say.
You mean it's not a heartwarming tale of suburban American bliss in the mid-century?
It certainly starts out that way.
It certainly starts out that way.
Kind of. But, yeah. It is the story about how... it's the story of what you just described and how it could go terribly, terribly wrong.
So you picked this film. It was your turn to pick this week. And I think your main criteria was that you glanced at the screen and you saw that it was Ewan McGregor and Jennifer Connelly.
Right. And I thought to myself, that's, first of all, a good match. And second of all, people I really like. And, I didn't know what to expect from the movie other than I'd never heard of it and they were in it.
Yeah, I love Ewan McGregor. Obi-Wan in the Star Wars films. He was in Trainspotting, another classic. Just all around, done a lot of good work.
A lot of good performances there.
And Jennifer Connelly, The Rocketeer, Labyrinth, Dark City. It's been a while since I see A Beautiful Mind. That's another one. I haven't seen her in anything in the last 10 years, though, really. I don't watch a whole lot of newer films. But, yeah, I was definitely looking forward to this one. And
then you pointed out Dakota Fanning was also in the cast.
And Dakota Fanning, who I haven't seen her in very much. I definitely know her more by reputation and name than actually having seen her work. I definitely saw her in War of the Worlds when she was a little kid. And I saw a couple of those era movies of Dakota Fanning. I don't think I'd seen anything where she's actually an adult.
Right.
At least not that I can recall off the top of my head.
Yeah, I've seen a few, but I couldn't tell you what they were.
So, I was definitely, thinking this might be a fun, interesting movie to watch. And it's definitely interesting. I would not call this a fun movie.
No.
This was absolutely heart-wrenching.
As fun as it is ever to watch anyone's life just devolve into, complete crap.
This would be the film. So as you said, it came out in 2016. It's based on a book by Philip Roth, which came out back in the 90s. And apparently the book has a much better reputation than this film, which was also Ewan McGregor's directing debut. Personally, I thought he did a good job with the directing. I thought it was a pretty good film.
I think he did a very good job of balancing things, especially with how difficult the subject matter was and how it required. We kind of jumped through time a couple times. It takes place in a couple decades. So how they transition between that, I thought was very interesting.
So let's introduce our cast of characters for this film. So we have Ewan McGregor. He plays Swede Lvov, which is, I'm going to mess that. I'm just going to call him Swede because I'm going to mess that last name up a bunch. So he's basically a Jewish American, war hero, athletic hero. He was kind of like Newark, New Jersey's hometown hero back in the 40s. And he married Jennifer Connelly's character, Dawn, who was Miss New Jersey. And their daughter, Mary, is Dakota Fanning's character. And those really are the main three.
The dad's a featured minor character.
Yeah, Peter Reigert playing Lou, the dad. He was good. And then there's Swede's brother, Jerry, played by Rupert Evans. And you have Uzo Aduba playing Vicky. He was one of Swede's employees. And that's pretty much the main cast right there.
And then Valerie Curry, she's the other kind of main, important storyline character.
So we had, Rita, Valerie Curry playing Rita Cohen. So let's set the scene here.
Yeah.
It's a I don't know, about mid '90s or so. There's a high school reunion. An older Jewish man played by David Strathern. I think I got that name right. He's just kind of just checking out, seeing what's going on at his old high school, and apparently he's become a successful writer, and he runs into his old best friend Jerry Lavov, who was the younger brother of Swede. He finds out that Swede just passed away, and he's like, oh no, what happened? And we get regaled with the tale of Swede's life the last several decades.
It's one of those things too where the writer character, he is kind of narrating everything in this introduction section, and so we kind of get the feeling that there's something more to this story, because the brother says like, oh, it was the daughter's fault, the Swede, his daughter, he could never let her go, and that's why he's dead.
Very cryptic.
Yeah, so it's very like, okay, obviously this is where we're going, kind of interesting way to introduce the movie.
You immediately know that it's going to have an unhappy ending.
Right.
That was the hard thing for me, is like you immediately knew like, shit, this is going to be hard to watch.
Yeah.
And at times it is.
You do know that then your main character is going to die at the end, from the start. But it's not really about his death, so it's okay as far as the rest of the movie goes. I mean, the death is incidental as far as it's not really important to the plot. It's just, the end of the story.
He just happened to die.
It's how, when you hear someone else's story in real life, that's more accurate than if you read a book. It's like fiction or something. You read their beginning to end story in a book, but in real life, their beginning and the end story kind of comes at the funeral. So that's like, I guess, a way to make it more realistic.
Sure. That makes sense. So, and, they take us back in this, at the beginning of Swede's life. He's the guy who's got it all. He's got the beautiful woman. He's got a terrific job. He's got this beautiful home, beautiful family. They talk about how like the world was going to open up its arms for him and rain its blessings upon him.
Well, his dad has a successful business that he built himself, making gloves, and has a lot of people that work for him that really like him, and just it seems like he's got everything stacked for him. He's already got this nice job, and the most beautiful woman in New Jersey, and how else could his life go?
Yeah, I mean, like what other wonderful, amazing things can come along, and well, they want a child, and they have a child named Meredith, whom they call Mary, who's a intelligent and precocious young girl with a stuttering problem. And the stuttering problem, the family tries to find ways to deal with it. They send her to a therapist. The grandfather Lou's is like, oh, she just, her tongue's just too fast for her brain or something. So she gets a lot of dismissive comments, and the therapist too, you get the feeling, isn't very helpful in it, and gives some really interesting, shall we say, theories onto why she stutters.
There's a lot of this is kind of like theories, I guess, that were more prevalent in those times.
Oh, sure.
But there's a whole lot of this, the Swede is kind of like the traditional, you just deal with problems head on, and this psychiatrist.
Yeah, like a therapist, I guess we could call her. Sheila.
She's coming from a very different direction, very counterculture kind of direction. And so it's difficult for them to move forward because the therapist is seeing things very differently than the way he sees it. And the wife too. I mean, she kind of goes along with what the Swede is doing for the most of that period of the film.
Yeah, because the film starts like around the at this point we're like in the early '60s too. So a lot of the beatnik generation is seeped into some of the more mainstream culture, and you see traces of that. And you definitely see that like in some of the art in the film and whatnot. But they basically get nowhere with addressing her stuttering, which only seems to become a greater and greater social hindrance for Mary as she gets older.
Yes.
She becomes more isolated, more withdrawn, and more angry.
There's a lot of the way she acts out, and she doesn't know how to deal with things as far as she gets really intense about them, and she doesn't have a safe release, so it ends up turning into behaviors that are just self-destructive, destructive to the people around her.
Like in in one scene early on, when we finally see her in adolescence, when she's a teen, Lyndon Johnson's giving a speech on a TV, and she really, really, loses it and just can't control her rage and anger at what's going on in Vietnam. I think I've skipped ahead a little bit, though.
I mean, a lot of the stuff that came before then is kind of world building and showing what's going on. I mean, it's the 60s. There's a lot of social unrest. There's a lot of different ideas. People are really the war and all that kind of stuff is all it's all a big problem.
But specifically, the self-immolation of the Vietnamese monk that Mary sees when she's, say, about 10 years old,
Right.
or maybe 12 at the oldest, just absolutely spins her world around and puts her right on her head.
And it's definitely the catalyst for she becomes very interested in the politics, and once you start thinking, why would someone do that? It really it makes her think about everything.
Yeah, it definitely. I think I'd be really remiss if we didn't mention that.
Yeah, it radicalizes her.
It really does radicalize her, and it opens her up, and it really sets her off on a trajectory that really she ends up aligning with. So they're out, like in the New Jersey countryside, but she tries to go into, as a teen, she goes into New York with, quote unquote friends who we never really see or find out much about, who are, countercultural activists, maybe good guys, maybe they're scumbags. We never really find out if, they're on the level or if they're just, nutcases. And, all that starts causing increasing tensions in the family. And, the daughter just becomes even more just, radicalized and angry and just resentful of her family and resentful of her parents. And
there's a couple scenes where I kind of mentioned it a little bit, but when we pass through time, the way they did it was they did like old clips of like archival footage.
Yeah.
So there's actual, real footage from the time in between whenever we do a little time skip. And so, they show people protesting during this time, and there's, racial riots going on and all this kind of stuff. And so they show actual clips of it in between these events happening. So it's kind of just showing over time that things are slipping for the Swede. His business is under attack. His, daughter's being radicalized. His wife, even at this point, is kind of losing touch a little bit with just, I guess, who she is. She doesn't really know who she is anymore, being this, I guess, person she never really wanted to be.
Yeah, like, she goes from being a beauty queen with ambition to basically just milking cows on this farm in the middle of nowhere, while the world around them is, changing radically and quickly. And yeah, it's very off, it's very off. What's a good word for it? It's unsettling for him. So there's a lot going on. The world's changing, radically. He's focused on his business. His wife is focused on the cows.
Right. I think that's the thing. The daughter is just absorbing all of it. And he can't see it because he's too, he's trying to keep the business afloat and just keep on doing what he's always done. And so he doesn't see how that's affecting her. I mean, he sees it, but he doesn't know how to deal with it.
Yeah, he has no idea how to confront it or combat it or...
I mean, he tries to do the kind of parent thing of, okay, you're not going to go to New York anymore. I'm going to say no. I'm going to put my foot down.
He tries to instill some boundaries, but she just disregards them, as we see. And he even tries to offer her an alternative to protesting in New York. And she's like, well, read Marx. You can't have a revolution in the countryside. And revolution's not what he has in mind, of course. He's a liberal sort.
He's against the war.
He's against the war.
Against the racial inequalities. So he has a good mindset as far as that stuff goes, but he doesn't have a radical mindset like she does.
Yeah, he's still very, centrist. And, you even see in another film, he has Republican friends and that kind of thing. And so he just tries hard to find a way to get through to her and to reach some kind of compromise. And he offers, well, hey, why don't you protest right here in our little town? Like your war pamphlets and stuff say to bring the war home. And, so why don't you do that here? And just, think about what I said. And then the big thing happens in the film. She, or a bomb is planted at the local post office and it kills one of their friends and neighbors. And then Mary disappears and they have no idea where she's gone. And they look high and low for her. They have their house searched by the FBI. Presumably gets wiretapped and bugged. A short time later, a young woman named Rita Cohen, played by Valerie Curry, shows up.
This is a while later.
This is a while later.
Is worth saying as far as they just show how in the aftermath, the Swede is just like unable to kind of cope with it. He keeps trying to say like someone made her do this, someone influenced her, someone brainwashed her, someone's kidnapped her.
Oh, but both parents are definitely in absolute denial about it,
and they just can't handle it.
And also too, when they're when the FBI first come to their house to do the search and look for evidence of things, that's when you really see the mother Dawn just absolutely kind of snap.
Right.
And she never quite comes back from that.
Yeah.
Like something just flips a switch. And that's kind of the catalyst for her to go on her little, spiral or trajectory.
And a lot of that too, you said when they went to the victim's house?
Yeah, the Hamlins.
That's right.
And they talk, so they go in the aftermath, they go, he and his wife, the Swede and Dawn, they go to the Hamlin's house. They talk to his widow, and these, they really try to, offer their condolences and, like if my daughter had anything to do with this, like I blame myself for my bad parenting or whatever. And, after quietly taking all of this in, the widow just kind of replies, I feel bad for you. You're as victims as we are. But in the end, we're still going to be a family and still be intact. And that'll be the key difference between us. And that was a massive burn and also correct.
Yeah, it just set the tone for the whole rest of the movie.
It really does. Because, Swede and Dawn never really have a marriage after that. At least, in really just in name only. And they spend years looking for Mary to no avail. And part of that, so I jumped ahead a little bit earlier, but, Rita Cohen shows up looking, she shows up at his glove factory, pretending like, oh, I'm doing a college thesis on, on glove making or something. And
on business,
and, so like, oh, we'll have a pair made for you and we'll talk to you about them. And, when he's with her in the office, she just immediately, just her expression changes and she like starts demanding personal effects that belong to Mary.
That only she would have known about.
That only Mary would have known about. So and that spirals this whole thing too, where he ends up on this goose chase, trying to get Rita to give him more information or tell him, where she is or something. And he never gets anywhere. She even lures him to a hotel room and tries to, get him compromised, sexually. And, I think a little bit comes pretty close to almost making him do it.
I mean, he's just so
And
desperate to reconnect with her, and he still can't ever accept the fact that she did this,
yeah,
that she was it wasn't someone else that forced her to do this, or there was some kind of misunderstanding.
he always believed in the ultimate goodness and innocence of his daughter, which I think just about any parent would, and that's incredibly natural. I mean, even Jeffrey Dahmer's parents still loved him till the end,
Yeah.
you know, and that guy like literally cooked and ate people. I mean, his parents still loved him,
Yeah.
and in Swede's case, he still loves his daughter and he wants the best for her. And he's still hoping that there's some way that he can salvage, her life and their relationship and everything. And, Rita just kind of plays him along and, for the most part, just, leaves him empty handed until he just happens to run into her one night and tracks her down. And then she ends up dropping him off in this really dilapidated neighborhood.
So in the neighborhood, she basically says, your daughter's here, and she's been here. And it turns out it's not that far away.
Right there in Newark.
So, it turns out that over time, the daughter has changed significantly. So Mary is not really Mary anymore. When we finally meet her, we spent all this time with Swede and seeing all of his struggles and, his just not able to accept the reality. So when we finally see Mary, it's confirmed that she's not Mary anymore. It's not really his daughter anymore. She's changed so radically that, he can't really even recognize that any part of her anymore. So it turns out she has been underground for a long time, going from place to place, being hidden, and then kind of just joining a religious sect. Well, I guess before that, she was responsible for the bomb. So she did do that.
She eventually does admit that when he asks her directly.
And not only that, but she did multiple times. And then over time, it seems kind of as a way to deal with the guilt, she's turned to this faith where, she doesn't believe in having anything or doing anything to anyone, denying herself of all kinds of material wealth.
She takes an extreme take on, like spiritual and physical and emotional minimalism.
Yeah.
She
basically deprived herself of everything.
Yeah.
Kind of in penance for what she's done. She doesn't come out and say it exactly that way, but basically like she finally felt what her destruction did to other people, and her way of taking kind of responsibility for it is by going this way.
Just isolating herself and apparently working in an animal hospital. But it's like she covers her face so she doesn't, breathe into the air and infect things, which is very interesting.
In this day and age?
In this day and age, a 5-year-old movie. But she only has the one thing on her wall, and it's like what the five principles or five.
Right. It's the. I'm assuming this is a real.
Yeah, it's like some Eastern religious
I
sect.
think you said it was
Jainism or something. We're probably butchering this.
I don't know.
We're middle-aged white men.
We got the idea of what it was.
We got the idea of what it was.
Perfectly fine.
It's a Middle Eastern Indian religious sect, Jainism or something. She called herself a Jain.
In a lot of ways, at this point, she's kind of not just confirmed that she's a different person, but she shows that, there's nothing left from her previous life. She doesn't value any of that anymore. From her point of view, she's kind of just just existing, but not trying to influence anything else.
The last time he sees her, he brings a bag of her things. I think in some ways to like rekindle some memory or something within her that would remind her of where she's from and what she's, initially of. And it just doesn't. It doesn't work. She just takes it as a sign as like, oh, are you going to be going away forever now? Maybe that's best. And he finally, gets her to remove her mask and her teeth are rotted out and, she's just like in terrible shape overall. And then she bids goodbye to him. And then that's basically that. He never sees her again.
Right. And throughout this part too, it's, the wife, Dawn
Dawn.
has, totally broken down. She's had some episodes. She's admitted to a mental hospital, and her way of dealing with it is very different than Swede's way of dealing with it. So she wants to go have plastic surgery and like just basically change herself. She wants to live the life she wants to live and just move on from this. But it kind of turns out during this point that she's also is moving on from Swede.
Yeah.
So she blames him for what happened with the daughter and for her own unhappiness. So she starts, fooling around with this other guy.
An artist friend of theirs, yeah.
Right, one of their mutual friends. So at this point, like the whole family's falling apart because even though he finally found his daughter, she's not really the same person anymore.
Yeah.
And then the wife doesn't, even if they'd had found her, the wife doesn't want anything to do with the daughter anymore.
Yeah, he even tries to tell her that, hey, I found her, and she just doesn't even want to hear it.
No, it's just too late.
And it's and even with the wife's infidelity, it's not ever revealed if there actually is a real confrontation about that.
Yeah.
Who knows?
I mean, I just assume at that point. I mean, he has no ability to let go. So I just imagine. I mean, it's left up to your imagination, but I felt that he didn't do anything about it, and she just left.
Yeah.
That's kind of the feeling I got for it. It's not like he was going to confront them. I felt like he would just let her go and just stay this broken kind of man. He has nothing left.
Does seem that way, but it is left to your imagination. At least in the film. I mean, in the book, maybe there's more there. I mean, I would be curious to read it if I didn't think it was going to be such an absolutely gut-wrenching, heart-crushing, soul-destroying read, which is kind of what I feel like I'd be in for if I cracked open a book like this. Just here, spend a few hours more, reading about the life of a man who's absolutely going down the toilet.
And now that we've talked about the guts of the movie,
yeah,
can we talk about like how emotionally investing I think it is? I think there's just a whole lot here. Obviously it's not light material and it's not happy material, but it is very enthralling, I think.
Of the 14 films that we've talked about so far, this is definitely the heaviest of all of them by far.
It's also kind of that like, the train wreck effect where like you can't look away. Like you have to see how.
Well, I mean, there were a couple of times too, like where I had to cover my face but still peek between my fingers. I definitely had that a couple of times. I mean, yeah, it's definitely an emotionally involving film. At least it was for me.
Yeah.
I just a cursory glance online, it seems a lot of the, at least professional reviewers at the time didn't seem to think so. But, what do they know?
I think it's just one of those things where a lot of it works really well. And it's not perfect. There are a couple times where the writing is like not exact enough. It's not like the theme is right. You know what I'm saying? The emotion's right throughout the whole film. I think the emotion was perfect throughout the whole film. And it was filmed well. Everything looks really great. It looks, period correct. And
some beautiful, beautiful cars.
We were at the one point when we took a short pause talking about how just looking at all the stuff in the background was great.
Oh yeah. Like, there's when like they're in their little den or whatever. And I'm just looking at the beautiful wood paneling and the lamps and the couches and, books on the shelves and everything. I mean, the set decoration was fantastic. And, that aside, I mean, even like the industrial buildings and Newark, New Jersey in the 60s looked fantastic. The clothing. And they didn't do any of that weird, like, sepia-ish tone to the film either.
No.
Which they love to do when they try to, recreate scenes from the past. I mean, they kept it,
They just
very true color.
They let everything look nice.
They did, yeah.
They didn't make it grainy and gross,
Yeah. Not even, like, subtly, really. So it was... I really enjoyed all of those aspects of it, too. So, yeah. So the window dressing was nice.
And I just feel like it helped stay connected throughout the whole film because you're also transitioning through time and a lot of different, kind of the political and turmoil and all that kind of stuff.
One thing that... so my father was born in 1940, and he hates hippies. He hates liberals. He hates anything remotely countercultural. And while watching this film, I mean, he would have been in his 20s and the 60s and that, my dad was in the service. And, and you really see like a lot of this film through Ewan McGregor's eyes. You really see the whole film through his eyes. Once you're in the past, for those sequences. And for a little bit, I was able to kind of see a bit of what pissed my dad off when he was young. I could see it, like the out of control, teenage rebellion and like the rioting and everything. I mean, it was able, because I've always been on the side of the counterculturals, and, have been ever since I was, a teen. And it was just, so I don't know, I was able to get a glimpse of just kind of the other side of things on how, more of how middle America may have felt, whether or not it was, regardless of like the facts of anything, just how people felt and how they regarded things and how they emotionally responded. And that was, that probably more than anything is what I think I got out of this film. Mm-hmm. Was maybe just a little more empathy for my cranky old father, just to see, cause he, not to get, too personal, but, he had a younger brother, he was a Hell's Angels who was killed. And, that always stuck with them, just events like that early in his life that really cemented his no pot and no this and no that. And, the goddamn hippies and everything. And it's like, and I get it in that sense. So I was able to see a little bit of that through his eyes just for a moment or two.
I think that's one of the strong points in the movie. I think the emotional connection to different characters is strong because, like you were saying, as someone who feels like the counterculture people were more right overall,
yeah,
it's hard because you want to sympathize with.
You want to sympathize with your team, so to speak, right?
No, as a viewer, though,
yeah,
I want to sympathize with Mary.
You do, but
because I mean, she's gone a little too far, but theoretically, she's on the right side.
In many respects, like she's against the war, she's against the destruction, and yet she became the thing that you sought to destroy as well.
All right.
And like in the end, it's like the only person I could really sympathize with was Swede.
Yeah.
Ewan McGregor's character. He was the only person, well, one of the only people I felt through the whole film who was being genuinely fair to everyone and trying his best.
Right.
And trying to be understanding even if he couldn't. And and just bewildered at, well, not even bewildered, but just defeated in his sense of being unable to affect any of the change that he was trying to.
Right. And that was kind of his flaw too, is that he was unable to change his mindset while everyone else around him was.
Yeah.
Everyone else was changing and he just couldn't accept it. It wasn't like he thought anything wrong necessarily. It's just he couldn't change. They even say it with in his business dealings because they keep saying other people are sending jobs overseas. Like I'm keeping everyone here, and everything he's doing is trying to grasp onto this life and keep it at all costs.
I mean, he's definitely that character is definitely representative of post-war America. and of the ideal of what America was, for a long time. And the inability of America to let go of that image of what it is to be American too, which we still have with us today. Because there's, we live in America where, it's incredibly multifaceted. And the portrait of Swede, like the all-American, the war hero, the star athlete, the guy who gets the girl, the guy who's his own boss, a lot of those, were fantastic, fantastic things to aspire to, sure. But so is, I don't know, I guess being a writer or being being an excellent garbage man or being a fantastic toaster oven repairman, or, being a yogi. So, I mean, Swede does do a great job of representing, like the old America and the America that collectively a lot of people look back on with fondness as what America was and really should be. It's like the baseline. And you see how that baseline, there's less and less room for that ideal in the world.
I think that's a perfect way to put it.
And, just like he has this ideal of what his daughter should be that she never was to begin with. If you consider stuttering a flaw and, countercultural rebellion a flaw, and, certainly pipe bombing and murdering is definitely a flaw. He never gives up on that ideal of what she was or should be to him. Even revisiting the place he last saw her for decades after he last saw her. Just wasting away at that spot, just waiting to see her again or catch a glimpse of her. When even she herself, as we see, moves on from that point as well. He never moves on. So, I mean, it makes you, wonder, what is this film really about? Is it about, letting go? Is it about moving forward? Is it about embracing change?
I think it's a complex movie, so I think it's about multiple of those things. I think definitely, like you were saying, you can't just be a living ideal. I think that's a big part of it. The people, it's okay to change. It's okay to be someone else. But at the same time, you can lose yourself if you tried to be the wrong thing. I think you just nailed it as far as there's the ideal American, their ideal America, and at a certain point that just couldn't exist anymore.
And indeed, it could only exist for a very short time, all things considered.
And like you said, it more exists, I think, in memory.
It exists more in people's minds than I think it ever existed in reality anyway. The nifty 50s were not nifty for, anybody who wasn't white and male. Certainly not for many women, certainly not for anybody who was any kind of ethnic minority. And yet those are the years that we glory. At least, a certain population in this country still does. And certainly, have for decades. In the 60s, we're also seeing too, I mean, the 60s were like the dividing point for a lot of things. That's the deviation decade from, the old system. And we've been in a cultural war ever since. That, we're still in the midst of now. I mean, there's footage of riots and shootings and police brutality, and it's like, man, nothing has changed. Some important things have changed, but not enough and not quick enough. And Mary's anger and rage at the world as it is justifiable in many respects. And certainly I empathize with that.
And still current.
And still a problem. We're still, bombing people overseas. I didn't mean for this, podcast to get political, but it is this time. This is a very politically charged film. But we're still bombing people overseas. We still have race problems in this country. We still have all the issues that this film addresses, because ultimately they're universal issues. And if anything, I think the real American ideal is that We're always going to have race problems. We're always going to be bombing people, and we're always going to be at odds with ourselves. I mean, I think that more than anything is like what it means to be American. You know, we're constant existential crisis. The end.
Beautifully said.
Thank you. Thank you. So, I don't know. Would you, what was your favorite performance in this film?
I think Ewan McGregor is an obvious choice for just likable main character, great performances, just your all American guy, which is great because he's not.
His accent in this was awesome.
Yeah.
Apparently he used Ray Liotta tapes to perfect his New Jersey accent, which I thought that's absolutely splendid.
I love his voice tone anyway, so just hearing him like really nail that mid-century northeastern accent.
Yeah, it was perfect. I loved it. And then I mean, there's not a bad performance in this film at all.
No.
Dakota Fanning did fantastic.
Yep.
Jennifer Connelly did fantastic.
I mean, Dakota Fanning, she had to go from like frothing at the mouth, teen radical, to just basically like a shell of a person at the end of the movie, which was, I mean, pretty incredible, I think, there too.
Absolutely, And even as the frothing teen, also have a stuttering problem.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, she definitely, it was definitely a challenging role, I think, and she did excellent. And I think my favorite, though, was Lou.
Yeah.
Portrayed by Peter Reichert. Just absolutely very direct, very bold, kind of rude father of Swede. He had a couple of great one-liners,
He played that perfect family member that always, always, always says something that's like, that you shouldn't say. You should never say that to someone. And he always just slips it in there.
He's just like, oh, what did I say? And it's not like it's super rude, but rude enough that he's like, he kind of lets you know where he stands on things,
Yeah.
His first scene is when, Swede takes Dawn to meet him, because they want to get married. And he's just like, and they're Jewish. Dawn isn't. And,
she's like Catholic too. So it's like,
yeah. And he's like, you're like, baptism? No way. We can't do that. We got to talk about the bar mitzvah. Well, I don't want a bar mitzvah. It's like, oh, we can't do this. But it was, that was a great exchange, It was, they were being respectful with each other, but also, and it was just great to see Jennifer Connelly just be like, I'm going to marry this man. I love him. And he's just like, yeah, well, it was good. It was just, he doesn't have a lot of screen time, but he's a great,
they're always good. Always good moments.
Like you see where like Ewan, or sorry, not Ewan's, but Swede's tenaciousness comes from a little bit.
Mm.
He definitely gets that streak from his, his very direct and stubborn father. And I don't know, that was nice. Most useless or extraneous character? The nurse.
I don't think that doesn't even count.
It doesn't? Okay, so at one point, after Swede's been contacted by Rita, he goes and talks to his brother, who's a doctor at a hospital, and they're having an exchange like on some steps outside, and just randomly this nurse tries to get him to come back inside, and he just very rudely shoos her away.
He tells her to go jump in the lake.
He's like, God, go jump in the lake.
Yeah, I guess.
There's
not a whole lot of extraneous characters in here, so I guess
not many.
Have to give that one to you.
I mean, here's the thing. I mean, that she did not need to enter that scene for that scene to have worked the way that it did.
Fair.
Does it really reveal anything about the character of Swede's brother Jerry?
No.
Other than that Jerry's maybe a little bit of a jerk?
Well, his character doesn't really matter. I mean, not that he doesn't matter as a character. I just mean his story doesn't matter.
Oh, his story doesn't matter at all.
Yeah.
He's just, but it is one little important point of reference because he's the one telling the story to,
right.
The writer in the beginning.
He is also the voice of caution.
He is the voice of caution.
He's the voice of, you should be working with the FBI. You should be, you should move on. You should, he's kind of, he can see that his brother is not keeping up with the times and not, changing. So he encourages him to, but at the same time recognizes that it's impossible.
And meanwhile, the nurse comes out and he shoos her away. So that'd be my win for this this week's most extraneous character. Soundtrack or score discussion. Is there anything we can add to those points?
Not much. I mean, there was some music earlier in the film I noticed more than later.
Yeah, there was some Buffalo Springfield, for what it's worth. That was the one that really stuck out with me.
There was some jazz.
There was Dave Brubeck's Take 5. That was fun. That's a good one. That's a classic. And then I think that was about it, So minimal music.
Yeah.
But the music they picked was excellent. I'll give it that. A+. All right. Final recommendation, Ken. What do you think of this one?
I really liked it. I liked that it was a bit of a deeper thinking movie, as we highbrow people call it, the good old thinking movie.
The deep brainer thinker. Whatever.
It's hard to watch a movie. Like I'm just not a real big drama person. I like my dramas to be a bit more, I guess I like more thriller kind of movies.
Sure. This was, I liked this film. I'm not going to say I enjoyed it. This is not a film that you go in and enjoy.
I think that's a great way to put it.
This is not this is not entertainment. This is
a great movie, I think.
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of great stuff in it, and it's good to think about the things that were happening. Sure. But like you said, it's not.
Like, if you want to sit and eat popcorn and eat cookies and have a good time watching this, that's not what's going to happen.
I mean, we sat and had popcorn and just suffered in silence.
with some good sidelongs, glances at each other. I mean, it's a heavy film. It's a heavy film. You're not gonna feel, happy and light after this. You're gonna feel kind of heavy and kind of maybe a little not depressed, but just a little low in spirit.
Yeah, I think it had something good to say as far as it was an interesting take on this time period, and like we were discussing, a lot of these points are still relevant today. You could tell this story right now.
I mean, you really could set it today and just tweak a few details and it would work fine. Shipping jobs overseas, racial justice, overseas wars, domestic terrorism, an out-of-touch father who can't quite grasp what the hell's going on in his world. That's pretty universal stuff right there, And there you have it.
So yeah, I think it was really good. I would recommend it if you're into more drama-y movies, or just I don't know. I don't know how to put that exactly. I do recommend it. I think it was really good. But like you said, it's not. You don't go into it wanting to be entertained.
This is not This is not for entertainment. This is not a bubblegum flick. This is not a summer tentpole film.
You go into this to just stew in someone's misery.
This is a Sundance Film Festival type of film, Yeah. This is we're trying to get an Oscar type of film.
Yeah.
And not for the special effects.
No.
Thank you for tuning in this week here at the O&M Stockroom with Complimentary Cinema. We're your hosts, Brian McGarry
and Ken O'Malley.
Next week, who knows what we're gonna watch. We don't know what it's gonna be until right before we watch it.
There is no way of knowing.
There's no way of knowing
if the rower is still rowing,
which they won't be. But yeah, so new episodes every Wednesday. Check us out here on whatever streaming service you're using, whether it be YouTube or Spotify, or what are some of the other ones?
Google, Apple, Stitcher.
Nice. I didn't even know I've never even heard of that one. You're awesome at this.
Castos.
What? Okay. Awesome. All right. We'll see you next week,
and
guys.
Of course, omstockroom.com.
And omstockroom.com. We're everywhere. Till next time.